I slid the door open and a breath of cool morning air met me. Clumps of thick clouds trundled silently over the city, an unusually strong wind driving them along. It's cold today. I shivered a bit and grabbed a jacket from near the door to wrap around myself. A week had passed since I began living in the headquarters of the Shinsengumi. They allowed me to roam around the compound as I pleased, and I was given a room of my own. They weren't the best accommodations, but given that they'd very nearly murdered me instead, I thought it best not to complain. Still, I looked down at my feet on the cold floor and sighed. Do I really need to dress like this all the time? They'd given me a place to live for the time being, but it hadn't been without conditions.
お前の身柄は新選組預かりとする。が、女として屯所へ置くわけにはいかね
え。As he explained, if rumors were to spread that the Shinsengumi were keeping a woman in their compound, tongues would begin to wag. It might even bring the people who were after my father to the Shinsengumi in search of me. Of course, they hadn't been able to determine whether or not he'd even been attacked. There were a great many questions left unanswered. We could ill afford any reckless decisions. Or so Hijikata had told me.
だから、お前には断層を続けてもらう。面倒だろうが辛抱してくれ。
Yes. His reasoning was sound. Perhaps more than that, I knew he was looking out not only for the Shinsengumi, but also for the safety of my father and myself. I didn't have a choice, of course, but knowing that made following his orders at least somewhat more palatable.
たとえ君にその気がなくとも、女性の存在は体内の風紀を乱しかねませんしね。
His tone suggested he was joking, but it was clear that he was telling the truth as well.
ですから、私たち幹部のほか、大使たちへも君の事情は話しません。
If word were to get out, there was no telling how fast rumors could spread or where to. I had to stay as a boy. Alright then, what should I do while I'm here?
屯所では何もしなくていい。部屋を一つやるから引きこもってろ。
あれおかしいな。この子、誰かさんの故障になるんじゃなかったですか？
Hijikata turned towards Okita and his eyes narrowed.
いいか、掃除。てめえは余計な口出しせずに黙ってろ。
Dang, Hijikata. Before long, I'd been there for a week. I guess I don't have much of a choice. I'd prefer otherwise, of course, but I'll do what I have to. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it just yet, but since I'd been dressing like a boy, I'd grown rather used to the feel of wearing pants and of having the kodachi my father had given me always at my hip. He presented me with it when I was only a child and impressed upon me at least some sense of its importance. Supposedly, it had been in the Yukimura family for generations. As such, I was forced to take lessons in swordplay, so I knew which end was meant for the enemy, but I had never much cared for weapons. They hurt people, of course, but it was more than that, at least for me. For as far back as I can remember, any wounds I suffered healed at an incredible rate. Small cuts would disappear overnight. As a child, I thought nothing of it, but as I grew older, I began to realize that I was not quite normal. When I asked my father, he told me that it was a gift from the gods, but I should tell no one of it. I didn't tell anyone, of course. I was afraid they would treat me like a monster if they did. Ever since then, I'd done my best not to get hurt. I stayed as far away from blades as I could, and I realized it. I was rather afraid of them. That's me in real life. Not the heal and fast thing, but the being scared of sharp objects thing. Dressing as a man all the time was frustrating, as was carrying a sword, but it was my condition that worried me the most. Still, that wasn't the only thing on my mind. The rank and file soldiers had been treating me coldly. I'm not just imagining it, right? I'd heard having a private room was a rare privilege, even for the captains. For a child to appear out of nowhere and be given better treatment than their own captains? It was a little wonder the soldiers resented me. It was little wonder. True, I suppose. I can't really blame them. Also, quite simply, I felt bad. I was enjoying the hospitality such as it was of the Shinsugumi. I could say that word. And so I felt I should help them in some way. But I knew nothing of soldiers and their ways. There wasn't much opportunity for me to learn either. Hijikata had instructed me to leave my room as little as possible. From time to time, the captains or other officers would send me on one errand or another, but I was nothing approaching of a page. Most of the duties they gave me were things more suited for a maid than a soldier, and it made the rest of the men even more resentful for what appeared to be special treatment. They're just watching me. Oh, I feel like somebody's watching me. To make sure, I kept my mouth shut. They took turns keeping watch over me. My mistakes could mean serious trouble for them, so they were doing their best to keep me away from the other soldiers. Then again, perhaps I was just a poor actor. Their soldiers almost never spoke to me, but when they did, it was difficult for me to act manly. All too often, the captains had to step in and to cover for me. Each time they did, it made it look as though I couldn't even manage to speak for myself, and I felt even worse. If I'm really going to stay here, I'd like to be friends with at least some of them. But I can't exactly tell them the truth, can I? Indeed, I couldn't. And so I had no choice but to stay out of the way and keep to myself. It wasn't a pleasant existence. I was beginning to feel depressed. If I'm supposed to stay out of the way, then I shouldn't leave my room, but I very much wanted to go look for my father. However, even after a week had passed, I was still not allowed to leave headquarters. I'd come to Kyoto in search of my father, but for the time being, it seemed that search had been stopped in its tracks. Perhaps I thought I could talk to Hijikata. He would give me permission to look for my father. Oh no, that's right. Hijikata left on a trip to Osaka several days before. Perhaps I can sneak out while he's not here? I wasn't sure what to do. I could stay put, but screw that. Let's see, talk to someone, search the compound. I'ma talk to someone. Perhaps there would be someone in the inner courtyard to talk to, I thought. I didn't want to be spotted by the soldiers, so I hid for a moment and scanned the area. Oh, good. Things were looking up. The only people in the courtyard were Okita and Saito. Good morning, Okita. Good morning, Saito. They showed no sign of surprise at my approach and turned lazily to greet me. What? How'd you guess? I just wanted to say hey. He was clever, I had to admit. Well, I didn't want to impose or complain, but they had asked. I was hoping I could go look for my father soon. But I'm bored. Oh. He hadn't exactly left me any room for argument. Well, no, I couldn't just give up like a quitter. Isn't there anything you can do? Anything? It's not like I want you to go very far. It's not like I want to go very far. Just a walk around the city near your headquarters would be enough. Oh! I had to admit, I hadn't expected Okita to lift a finger for me. Maybe his middle finger, but... He gave me a smile, but it wasn't entirely pleasant. Well, I know a little self-defense. Little being the operative word, but I couldn't bring myself to simply stand there and say nothing. In all honesty, though, the last thing I wanted was to see another person die. I had seen enough of that, and to last a night Had seen enough of that to last a lifetime. Still, I told myself I couldn't let fear rule my decisions. No matter the danger, I had to look for my father. Kyoto was a dangerous place, and if I let fear hold me back, I knew I'd never find him. I felt Saito's eyes on me before he spoke. See, that's not fair. Aren't you like a super experienced swordsman? Like, what am I supposed to do? What? I looked up at him, then back down at my Kadachi. Yes, I've learned how to use my sword, but I Alright. But, and Saito simply stared at me with flat, cold eyes. He looked almost bored. Oh, he disrespected me. No, of course it's not, and I have taken lessons. I'm not lying. But I can't attack you. If you get stabbed or cut, you could die. As if I could even hurt him. Like, I feel like I would try to attack him, but he'd be able to block it. Like, laughter shook his body, as it should. Because who did I think I was? Like, really? I'm gonna hurt Saito? Really? It's not funny, it kinda is.
Saito-kun 相手に殺しちゃうかもなんて不安になれる君は文句なしにすごいよ。最高。
Of course, I hadn't thought I could beat one of the captains of the Shinsengumi, but still, my blade is very pointy. His words certainly hadn't made me feel any better about the situation. Swords are made for killing people. What if I hurt him? My words were more for myself than them, I suppose. I wouldn't think twice about attacking to defend myself or to protect someone else, but this was nothing like that. I can't just draw my sword on someone for no reason. If there's even a small chance it could hurt them. Okita grinned at me. It was a strange smile, somehow warm and cold at the same time. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Yeah, stop being a wuss, Yukimura. Huh? Yeah, stand up to him, Yukimura. Then he wanted to test me. To help me? I looked down at my sword. Then back at Saito. Then down at my sword. Then back at Saito. I'm on a horse. Does anybody even remember that commercial? Even with the scabbard or the back of the blade, a strike in the right or wrong place could easily break a bone. Really, like I have that sort of, you know what? Yukimura is full of herself if she thinks that she can hurt Saito, an experienced swordsman, member of the Shinsengumi. But if they were doing this for me, well, I could hardly turn them down. I straightened up and looked straight into Saito's cold, calm eyes. Let's go, gamers. No. Let's go. Let's go. I settled into a fighting position. Saito cocked his head slightly to one side and let out a small noise. It took to be a laugh. Saito's smiling. He didn't appear to be moving to a fighting stance of his own, despite the fact that I was clearly ready to attack. Did he intend to leave his sword sheath? I stopped at thought as soon as he showed itself. As soon as it showed itself, his words were to be trusted. Here I come. Here I come. As I stepped forward, I let out a yell and lunge. The backside of my blade collided with a defenseless Saito. Yeah! Or so I thought. Huh? In the space of a blink, his face was only inches from mine, and I could feel the cold steel of his blade. This, then, was the skill of a captain of the Shinsengumi. My body froze, and I could feel the beginnings of a cold sweat. That knife is awfully close to my... That sword is awfully close to my neck.
死を誇れ。お前の剣には曇りがない。
The heck does that even mean?
立ち筋には心が現れる。お前は死に恵まれたのだろう。
Is that true? That feels like a very anime thing. I don't know if that's actually true. Like, can you really see the heart? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a swordsman and I don't really know anything about swords. So I'm just like, is that an anime thing or is that like really true? I don't know. But anyway, he turned without another word, sheathed his sword, and began to walk away. Only then did I notice just how wildly my heart was beating. What was that?
これいい子たちだね。ずいぶん年代物みたいだけど。
You look old. Huh? I looked over at Okita to see him holding my kodachi. I looked down at my hand where I expected my sword to be. It was empty. I'm sorry. Thank you for picking up my sword. He nodded and tossed the sword to me. I reached for it, but there was almost no strength in my hands, and I nearly dropped it. The blow of Saito's sword on my own had left my hands, even my arms, numb. That strength seemed almost inhuman. Why did he go so hard?
大丈夫？やっぱり驚いたかな。斉藤君の居合は達人級だからね。
Ei? Uh-oh. No. His smile had grown even wider, although I had no idea what he found so amusing. Yes, I suppose I'm okay. But what's Ei? Is that Nelly song? I felt like a bit of a fool asking, but they seemed to think it was a perfectly legitimate question.
対等状態から抜き打ちの一撃を放つ技だ。抜刀直後の刃が上向いているのはわかるな。
I'm not gonna remember that. No way, no how. Yes. You wear your katana just like my kodachi then, Kodachi. He nodded. There had been a time when all swords were worn with the blade down, but nowadays most wore them up.
本来であれば、刀身が鞘から抜け切るまで待ち、刀を返して相手に刃を向ける手間がかかる。
And he could have easily taken my head with that blade had I faced him in actual battle. There was no doubt that I would have been dead before I even touched him.
居合は片手で抜き打つことが多いから、結果的に威力が下がって実用性は低いなんて言われることもあるんだけどね。
That's not a problem Saito has. He could easily finish an opponent with a single blow. My voice was quiet with fear and awe. Okita laughed easily and gave me a
君
nod.
の小立を弾いた後、即座に追撃してとどめを刺してたと思うよ。
The only reason I survived that encounter was because Saito had never intended to kill me. That thought made me shiver. That's Ei then. I feel like I'm saying that word wrong. And from a true master of the art. I didn't have the words to describe what it was like. Something that felt a good deal like fear coiled around. It coiled around my heart, okay? However, I'd seen them act. The men of the Shinsengumi were deadly. To live in their headquarters was to I was gonna say to swear up. No. To live in their headquarters was to share your home with men who could take life as easily as breathing.
落ち込むことはないと思うが、お前は外を連れ歩くに不便を感じない腕だ。
That an insult? I'm not really sure. Really? Saito, are you insulting me? Or you know what? I don't know. I looked from Saito to Okita. He gave me a smile and brought his hands together in polite applause.
斉藤君のお墨付きか。これってかなりすごいことだよ。
Yeah, he doesn't seem like the type of person to smile a lot. Then that means you can take me with you? He stopped smiling. Oh, he stopped smiling.
外出禁止令を出した人が許可するなら、いつでも連れて行ってあげるんだけどね。
Right. I had a feeling he was going to say something along those lines, so I simply nodded in agreement.
土方さんが大阪出張から戻るまで
Ah,
しばし待たせる
heck with Hijikata. Goodness. Treat me like a child. Treat me like a baby. You're not my dad. Goodness. Oh, you don't need to apologize, Saito. It's alright. Goodness. Gotta get permission from Hijikata. Who does Hijikata think he is? Saito looked at me for a beat, then turned away. I thought perhaps he felt a little bad, which I can appreciate.
巡察に同行できるよう俺たちから土方副長に進言しておこう
Thank you, Saito. Thank you. Because as it stands, Hijikata just don't care about me. Like, at all.
だからもう少しだけおとなしくしててね。遊び相手くらいにならなってあげるからさ。
Really? What kind of company would they be, I wondered. Better than being alone, though. I turned and looked up at the sky. At least I had made some progress in my search, I told myself, however little. The wind had pushed the clouds off of Kyoto, and the brilliant blue they'd hidden shone down on me. I watched shadows drift up my wall as the orange light of the sun painted my room the color of autumn leaves. How long am I going to do this? Solitude was proving detrimental to any sort of continued optimism. All my thoughts eventually turned dark and hopeless. It was depressing, but most of it was frustrating. How could I let myself be discouraged so easily? Fairly easily, actually. I'd been swept up in a frightening world I didn't understand and couldn't possibly control. I can't possibly figure out what's happening to Father if I'm stuck here. Only Hijikata can give me permission to leave, and he's gone. Screw him. All I could do was wait. Lamenting things I couldn't change wouldn't improve my situation and would arguably make it worse. Still, there was at least one thing I could be thankful for. At least they've all been nice to me. I knew I couldn't trust the men of this Shinsengumi completely. They were, after all, men who could take life in the blink of an eye. Blink! It would be all too easy for the next life they took to be mine. They're nice men, deep down. Right?
君さ、騙されやすい性格とか言われない？
Is that Okita? Ah? My voice froze in my throat. Of course it's Okita. I turned slowly to find Okita standing behind me. What are you doing here?
あれ？もしかして気づいてなかったとか？この時間帯は僕が君の監視役なんだけどな。
Of course I was under surveillance, which meant... Did you hear everything I said? He said nothing, only smiled and blinked laconically. He'd heard me. He had definitely heard me. I wanted to scream, but before I could open my mouth, Saito stepped out from behind the door.
掃除無駄話はそれくらいにしておけ
Were you here the whole time too?
つい先ほど来たばかりだが
Oh, thank goodness. Oh. I pressed my hands to my chest in an effort to calm my pounding heart. I'm sorry for screaming like
気
that.
にするなそもそも今の独り言は聞かれて困るような内容でもないだろう
Then he had heard me. True, I didn't say anything bad, but still, it's freaking embarrassing. It's embarrassing being caught talking to oneself. I was so embarrassed. Saito looked from me to Okita and back, and his brows drew together almost imperceptibly.
夕飯の支度ができたんだが邪魔をしただ
You didn't interrupt anything. Nothing was interrupted. Oh no, nothing like that. I shook my head emphatically.
あんたと掃除の話に一区切りついたら声をかけるつもりだ
Our discussion is over. He let the words hang in the air, but his eyes said that he determined we'd continue forever if he didn't interrupt. I had opened my mouth to say, I'm not sure what, when Hesuke shot through the air, through the door. the moment he saw us, however, his face fell.
あのさ、飯の時間なんだけど。
すまん平介、今行く。
はいはい。急げって。早くしねえと食うもんなくなっちまうからね。
He turned to me all nice. He was all like, come on, it's dinner, you guys. And he turns to me and is like, hey, it's dinner time. Sorry, Toto. I'll be there as soon as I can. He turned to leave, but stopped just as he reached the door. I saw him purse his lips for a moment, and then he spoke.
その東堂さんってやめない？みんな平介って呼ぶからそれでいいよ。
Are you sure?
年も近いからその方がしっくりするし。
Oh, I just had a thought. Okay, so like I was wondering about certain routes, and I tried to Google it and I couldn't find the answer I was looking for, but then I'm like, wait a minute. Can't I just look it up within the game? Maybe it's in an encyclopedia? Status, maybe? Status? This is all there is. Darn it. I want this. Darn it. These are only routes. Whatever. Alright. I'll do that then, Hesuke. He turned and gave me a wide grin.
そうそう、それでいいよ。じゃあ早く行こうぜ。
He all happy.